outside and sunshine. You know, those are all things that sound very nice. And there's lots of people out there that that certainly want those items. But you also have to think about what's important once you buy those items. And, you know, when you're protecting kids or you're protecting your own assets, then you have to really consider what all these outdoor spaces means. And who better to talk to us about that than the guy who wrote the book, Protecting Your Assets, Paul Pukis with Mosaic Insurance Alliance. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good,
Let's keep that energy going here today,
You were dancing when you came in.
Earlier. And then I sat down and had the sugar rush just kind of left. And, yeah. Now
Cheer
I'm
up,
back.
Paul. Come on now.
You bet. I'm back.
So, Paul, you're hearing about pools and outdoor spaces, and, you know, when you start thinking about your house, this is probably one of those things that people maybe don't consider all of a sudden. This is maybe mean a change to your insurance when you start adding these things.
Yeah, as, you know, and Jim and Charlie were talking about different things. So what's going through my head is, man, I sure hope that person is talking to their insurance agent after all that work is done, because the last thing they want to have happen is all this really cool stuff done. Your outdoor sports bar, something happens, oh crap, I forgot to include that additional cost to my insurance policy, and I just ate the entire thing and I got to do it again.
And now your outdoor sports bar is ruined.
And you better start saving again for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you kind of want one now? An outdoor sports
I like
bar?
the sound of it.
I did too. You know, we talk about man caves in the winter. Now
Yes,
now we're on outdoor sports bars. So what do people, I mean, what are questions that somebody should ask their insurance agent if this is a road they want to go down with these outdoor spaces?
Well, let's touch on two of them. First one, when Jim talked about the pools, and he's absolutely correct about some of the requirements in Washington State. They go along, it's kind of crazy how insurance companies kind of tailor their same requirements to what the state and stuff like that requires. There are insurance companies out there. Yeah, it does. It's crazy how those two industries can do something that makes sense. But the pool, if you're adding that, there are companies out there, insurance companies, that are very concerned about that. It's called an attractive nuisance is the term. Same with a trampoline. So unless you put a fence around it, or there's a way to completely avoid that, you just put the pool in your house. But if that's not what you're doing, if you're putting it outside, then you need to take precautions, because if you have an accident on the property that involves the pool, unless it's a company that's okay with having the pool the way it is, you may not have coverage. And that would be a bad situation to be in.
And so really, I mean, there's a safety issue of, I guess, protecting a lot more than just your pool.
Yeah. I mean, the pool...
You're talking about protecting the people who might go in the pool.
Adding the cost to rebuild a pool if there's a fire, well, the pool's not going to go anywhere. You'll probably be lucky to have it. You could probably use the water in the pool to help with the fire. And actually, depending on where you live, you can negotiate that with your insurance company. Different tip there for the listeners, depending on where you live. But the pool's not going to go anywhere, so there's not a big concern about the replacement cost of that. Earthquake, different story. But what Charlie does is where you really got to pay attention to the rebuild costs, because if he's building a deck around the pool, that's going to go up in flames just like the rest of the house. But the safety stuff, you've got to be concerned about that to make sure that your insurance policy covers it, just like you're talking about. There's more to it than just protecting the pool or the stuff that's built around the pool to make it a livable space. You've got to make sure that the insurance company you're with is okay with the work that's being done to make sure there's safety precautions around the pool, so the policy still remains intact.
You know, you talked about replacement costs, and, you know, when somebody goes out and they want to, not necessarily the pool, but the outdoor space, and if you're really building an outdoor sports bar, or you're putting in the new fireplace and the seating areas and the deck and, you know, the whatever, I guess, goes into an outdoor sports bar, which I'm sure I will learn more about soon. But as you do all these things, you talk about replacement costs. Now, a lot of people consider, well, what's this going to add to value of my house? But that's not really what you're talking about.
No, that's probably one of the most common questions we get, especially in the current market. I don't care, as your protection advisor, what the market value of your house is. I really do not care. I care, from an insurance perspective, what is it going to cost for an insurance company to sign over one check to a general contractor to replace your house exactly the way it was the day before the loss occurred? That's what my job is. And in the current market, a lot of times people are confused when they see a dollar value higher on their insurance policy to rebuild their home than what their house is worth. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you've got a great resource sitting right next to me here with Charlie to explain that it costs a lot more money to rebuild a house than it does to build one from scratch that's new. You've got economies of scale you can use. I mean, Charlie, sounds like you're a custom home builder, so economies of scale, you're not going in to build 50 homes at one time where you can actually buy lumber and materials at a lower cost. You're paying retail. You know, something happens, people are going to understand, well, you really need to get this done quickly, don't you? Okay. There's all kinds of stuff built into the cost to rebuild a house. You've got materials, you've got labor, you've got the overhead, and you've got profit for the contractor. That's all built into what you see on your insurance policy, which is very, very different than market value.
So if somebody goes and they build one of these outdoor spaces, or maybe does a small remodel, or whatever it may be, how do you generate, what do? You call the insurance company and they come out and they come up with a replacement cost? Or what are those next steps?
Well, when you're talking about adding on to something after the main home's been built, so the additional outdoor space, you probably have receipts of what it just cost someone to do that. That's the very easy part. It's the overall reconstruction cost of the house that's more difficult. Should you have an agent come out? Yeah, it would make sense if you have a relationship with an agent that cares about the protection of your house to get pictures. Now, if it just isn't feasible because you live 500 miles away from your agent or you don't have one, well, taking pictures and making sure they get that is good, because anytime a claim happens, the claims adjuster wants to get that off their desk as quickly as possible. And if you can provide information that helps them do that, they're going to be very grateful, and you're going to get the full value of what you lost.
So there's an element of making it easy for the insurance company to understand what the costs were.
Yep. Receipts that you have from the contractor, invoices that are done. Hey, this is exactly what I paid for it 2 years ago. They'll do the math and figure out what it's going to take to rebuild it.
So oftentimes, there's a lot with when you buy or when you remodel, you might get 70 or 80% of the value out of it in your home. Mm-hmm. In this case, it would really behoove you to really understand the cost, because the cost is probably going to be more than the actual value.
Right. And again, I don't care about the value it is to the market, but if it costs $40,000 to do the work that he's doing, and that's what the total invoices add up to, it would be my recommendation that you look at increasing the cost to rebuild your house by $40,000. He just did it. And if he has to do it again next week because it burned to the ground, it's probably going to cost about the same thing. It actually might cost more because of all the planning he did before that. He may not have the time to plan the same way. He might have to put rush order on materials to get it the same way. All that type of stuff needs to be calculated into the cost to rebuild. And
especially if you're not going to be able to live in the home, you need it to be done quick.
That's right. There's in your insurance policy, depending on the company you have, there are different levels of loss of use or additional living expense, however it's termed in your policy. Yeah, that's in there.
We're here with Paul Pukis with Mosaic Insurance Alliance. Paul, just about a minute left before we need to go to break. So when they go through this, when somebody's thinking about a remodel, adding outdoor space, how many people do you think fail to actually go about this process with their insurance agent? I mean, do you see that all the time?
95% of folks.
Oh, dear.
Maybe. It's just something that doesn't come up. You really don't think about it unless you have annual reviews or reviews with your agent to go, hey, have you made any changes to your home? Oh, yeah, I added a whole nother floor. That would have been great to know before something happens. So you should have an agent that's proactive, that's asking questions at renewal time. But
excited. That goes back to the whole beginning. Kind of excited to work with you. Happy to make that annual call, because you make that annual call, whether it's insurance or mortgage, financial planning, they should be excited to reconnect. And there's a lot of professionals who, they get the call, hey, how's things? Good. Everybody good? And they're doing you a disservice by not showing some enthusiasm towards the process.
Yeah. And, certain large things like that, if you're putting a lot of money into your house, it does behoove you to contact the people, not just insurance, but the people that have a vested interest in making sure your stuff's protected, and to make sure that you've updated things.
Well, Paul, thanks for joining us. Stick around for a few minutes. We're going to continue the conversation with Jim Estrada, Charlie Carter, and Paul Pukis. Myself and Heather Moore is going to join us too. We'll be right back after this break.